How long have we got? I'm really sorry I'm late again.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, so
How long have you booked in for us?
as long as we want, it can be 20 minutes, a half an hour.
Okay.
Sometimes we talk for an hour, but usually not. I mean, do you have something else you need to get to or?
No, no, not at all. Just so I can have a sense of,
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, mainly we just want to kind of get an idea of where you're at and
yeah.
what brought you to the class. How did you find out about this course?
Um, I've got a kind of friend or associate called Luke Flegg, who he's very into systems change, and he's in Extinction Rebellion.
Oh,
And
okay.
he's like an activist. Um, and I think I was in a group which was like looking at creative solutions to COVID-19. And the link didn't work actually to your, but later on he just sent me a link. And then I turned up at George's talk or thing the other day or earlier in the week.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you were at the.
Yeah, and that's how I learned about it. So it wasn't this particular course originally. It was the kind of generic, it was partly a marketing thing actually to get people in touch to the different courses. I did originally apply to the music course, but that's been cancelled because of lack of people. And I wasn't sure with this course. I'm kind of learning how to be a cryptocurrency trader, for all things, and I want to start up a therapeutic community with the money. So I'm not so sure about how much time I have. I mean, I need to talk about that, and but there are certain themes. I kind of need to define where the course is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think my application, I was a bit rambling, but I just thought I'd write down some of my passions and just see how they might, how I might be able to. For example, I find it quite. I quite like to be able to ground some of my passions with something, which is a kind of mixture of art and activism, and ultimately something potentially healing. That would be a perfect synthesis for me. Yeah. I did actually have the idea. I've got the idea of at some stage create. I cycle a lot, and I'm very concerned about. It's great now. I'm probably the same where you are. But there's hardly any cars on the road. So the quality of life is just so much better in cities. And I think I've often thought. I thought about creating a neon jacket for cyclists to wear, and the kind of theme on it on the back would be like these lungs, because this virus is very about lungs, and then a kind of exhaust pipe, with toxins. So you have a kind of visual thing about your car you're driving along is harming lungs, And I mean, we've got a lot of people. I think a lot of people die, because or have really bad, lives, asthma and things because of car pollution, So, but I don't know. It could be like a video campaign, or it could be a meme, or I'm not sure. How to. Yeah, I'm not sure where the course is coming from in terms of that. Yeah.
Sure. Well, the course is sort of based in integral theory, which is a theory of sort of an evolutionary theory. And the first question, are you familiar with any meta theories like integral theory or spiral dynamics?
Is that Ken Wilber?
Yeah, Ken Wilber's integral theory.
Yeah. I've read some Ken Wilber,
Okay.
not recently, but um, I really like what I remember of it. I really like how all the interconnections. Yeah, a lot. Yeah.
Yep. And the idea of the theory is to help you embody that. Not the theory. The idea of the class rather is to help you embody the kind of that theory into yourself, so you actually can perceive it more widely. So the real secret of the course is that it's not actually about making a movie. It's actually about altering your perceptual apparatus. So help you upgrade your perceptual operating system. And we found that we've had people in there who are fairly advanced in integral theory, but this class, the process of trying to incept a movie or an idea and put it into being actually really helps to embody that in them. So they come out of it saying almost everyone in the class said they had major shifts in their perception of self, other, and world as they went through this process.
Yeah.
So it's quite powerful that way. So it's based in integral theory, but it's also just based in upgrading your perceptual operating system and learning how it can be applied into media. And so as you watch media, you'll see more than you ever saw. You'll see when films and other visual media have opportunities to do things that they don't take. You're like, oh, how come they didn't also add this dimension? So that thing you were talking about of having lungs with an exhaust pipe, that can make a connection that people don't necessarily make. And there's a lot of deeper levels of those connections. So that's kind of what we're looking at. So if you have some knowledge of integral theory, that's always useful.
I'm not an expert, but I've about 5 years ago,
Well, it's a very kind of technical theory, but really the theory is just an attempt to map the integral structure of consciousness. So a lot of filmmakers are working at that structure, even if they don't know anything about the theory. Like, you don't have to know about it just to realize that there are ways of perceiving where you're perceiving the 4 quadrants, if you remember, the interior and exterior, individual and collective. Those are the 4 quadrants. You have an individual interior and an individual exterior. And then which is the individual interior is your thoughts and feelings and beliefs, and the exterior is what happens around you. And then you have the collective, 2 collective versions of that, which are like culture and society is the collective interior, and systems like the system of law, the like power grid, those are the exterior.
Right.
So when you really want to make a powerful film, you want to communicate across all of those domains and unpack an issue from all those domains rather than just being more simple about it. So it's kind of that idea, but Mark is a brilliant theorist. He's kind of come up with an entire theory of the application of integral theory to the moving image, which is, as I say, everybody had major breakthroughs. I don't know if you saw the 2 testimonials I sent you from 2 very different people. I mean, Rachel actually was steeped in Theory U, which is also based on integral theory, or it's related to integral theory, just popular. And Victor is just a filmmaker, an artist, they both had these amazing experiences with the class.
Yeah.
So, and do you have any background in film? Do you know?
No, not at all. No, I used to hang out with arty directors, but no, I mean, only as a consumer.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, now everyone has a smartphone, so in a way you have a camera on you all the time.
Yeah, I got a really good iPhone. I got an iPhone 11 Plus.
Oh, so you have a better camera than anybody had 20 years ago, in a way.
Really? Wow.
It's like a professional camera from 20 years ago.
Yeah. I wish I'd got more memory. I wish I'd got more. I think it's only 250. In terms of. I don't know if that's enough, but anyway.
Yeah, that's plenty. I mean, I say the purpose of this isn't, there will be a project and you're kind of working on a project and it's divided into sections where you go through inception and then design and then shooting the project and then even the reception aspect of it. How do you receive the project afterwards? And the class is designed to work as a collective. So groups are working together and there's a collective intelligence field. That's what George is all about, collective intelligence. So certainly that. And so you have a project in mind, or you have an orientation to what you want to kind of be moving towards? You don't have to have a project.
No, I don't. I mean, I'd be interested to know about, generative ideas, ways, processes to generate.
Yep.
I'm good at brainstorming and all that.
Yep, that's a whole section of the class. Is just that inception process. How do you generate ideas? How do you work with those?
I mean, I was going to go at one stage I was going to go into the film industry when I was like a teenager, and I actually went to see the head of in Britain back in the day. You had to be in a union to work in the industry, and I went to see the head of the industry, and he said, "Oh, don't go to film school, get a job, you know, on Wardour Street." And I actually got a job, but I kind of decided I didn't like, you know, I didn't like Hollywood. I didn't like mainstream stupid cinema, you know, most of it. I like Douglas Sirk, people like that. But and you know, Bresson, and you know, but the kind of industry, you know, I just really didn't like it. So I did something else, you know.
Yep.
So, but I'm interested in film as a way of, you know, for ideas that are break molds, or you know, new perceptions and things. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, this is certainly a perfect class for that, because we're all about kind of how you incept what you're envisioning and how you make that real and concrete. And I say in the process, you're upgrading your perceptual operating system, so you're seeing the whole world differently and everything in it, and films as well, you know. And fortunately, in the last 25 years, the technology has been democratized so much that you can now make a film with your smartphone and your computer, you know.
I've got an iMac, which is handy. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Exactly. You can do it on iMovie or Final Cut Pro if you want to get that, you know, depending how.
So I'm kind of thinking of, there's the element of the understanding the theory in terms of Wilbur and integral theory. Yeah. Then there's the aspect of creating a project which somehow is in relation to that. And then there's an examination of certain priorities and how they can be manifest by way of that project and integral theory. And then the fourth thing, I'm sure it's going to have four things in it. I can't think of the fourth thing. But...
Well, then there's also reception, which is design the reception of the project even after it's all completed. But I say again, this class really isn't about the project. I mean, we had some people who had a lot of time and were artists and did all kinds of things with it, and other people who just shot a few things and then just got inspired to do just a shot inside of a library someone did, inside of a fancy, very old library, and kind of narrated through it, and that was her project. And so it's not really about the end project, it's more about the process, because in going through the process, it seems to be very powerful for, they say, upgrading your perceptual operating system and giving you a broader sense of self, other, and world. It's pretty.
Yeah. I'm sort of interested in, I don't know how, I mean, sometimes they say you've got to learn how to do something before you can break rules. But I'm just interested in, I used to go to the London Filmmakers Co-op back in the 80s, and they used to play, you know, lots of experimental films. So I quite like that aspect, you know, of just messing around with, not messing around, but coming up with maybe different narrative, you know, unusual narrative structures. But who knows, you know, who knows?
Well, I mean, we talk about that in the course, actually, what makes for avant-garde film and experimental film, and we obviously recommend and encourage a lot of that, but we're also interested in how mainstream films can be subversive in their way as well.
No, well, I think that's, for me, that's the ideal. I mean, you know, films like Don't Look Now, which kind of use both, you know, they use, you know,
right.
Interesting
that theory. Is, I think, actually an integral film, Don't Look Now. It's an amazing film. I think so. As I recall, I watched it fairly recently, actually. The way he plays with time, the concretion of time, is one of the elements of integral films that you'll see, trying to unpack the nature of his memories and stuff like that. So
it's a beautiful film.
Yeah, he's quite amazing.
You got the mosaics in the, you know, in the church, these themes of death.
Yep.
Beautifully.
Yeah, I love that film. I mean, Nicholas Roeg was way ahead of his time in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yep. So what's your situation in the pandemic? Do you have family or kids that you'd want to also involve in this? Or
no, I live on my own.
Okay, so
Yeah. So I am involved in quite a few Zoom groups, and it crossed my mind. I might have to get permission, but I could use footage from Zoom groups um, in some project, because that's kind of very,
Yeah, I mean, you can also use stock footage. There's even stock footage things if you don't want to shoot anything. We offer
yeah.
lots of different ways for people to make something, just shoot something on your phone or just put something together.
Yeah, I was going to buy. I was going to buy a thing to put my iPhone on my bicycle, and then because of my listening to music,
Mm-hmm.
and then I thought, oh, I could shoot film,
That's
on
right. You can shoot
a bike
tracking
or
shots,
on a hat or something. Yeah,
dolly
yeah,
shots, down the length of the street.
yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
We got, but I'm not. Yeah, I'd be fascinated to. Yeah, I mean, I'm slightly daunted, but that's good,
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep. But I say there's no grading or anything like that, so it's not a pressure situation.
no, 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 no. It's not. No, it's not so much that. It's more to do with my other commitments, and it's like how much time
Right. So the
can I.
estimate on this, right, the class itself is an hour and a half once a week.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
there's also going to be probably sessions, also an hour and a half, community of practice sessions, where those are optional, but if you want, you can come on and people bring in projects to discuss. It's sort of more free form, which is also an hour and a half sometime during the week. And
Yeah.
then other than that, there's some practices that Mark will give you as a class to do. So, I mean, 5 hours a week is probably what's the whole class will take, unless you decide to make a project and do something more, you can.
I mean, I presume there's also for me. I'd want to read up on Wilbur again, and then I'd also want to learn about making movies on the Apple, and then I'd actually want to be editing stuff and creating footage. So I'm thinking that could take
Right.
maybe another.
Obviously, this could become a huge commitment if you decide to get, really big into this,
Yeah,
so then the commitment of learning how to use Final Cut Pro or even iMovie, which you probably have on your computer already,
yeah.
which works quite well. I mean, Final Cut Pro is a little more powerful, but iMovie works fine. You can make a pretty nice movie on that.
I like. It's funny because I'm involved in learning about crypto. I'm not actually naturally into trading, but
Mhm.
I happen to make a lot and then lose a lot of money with Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, a lot of people have that
And,
story.
and, and I just, well, I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn how to. It's all about cashing in at the right time, basically, with these
Right, which
coins.
there's no way to really know, but you can kind of play the market a bit. I
It's
mean,
like,
I
I mean,
sold all my stuff and bought back in when Bitcoin went down
yeah,
in the
yeah,
sixes, I think. And I have ETH and Bitcoin and that. I've been involved in the crypto space for quite a while.
yeah. I mean,
Not my
I'm
first.
in one called Link at the moment, which is
Mhm.
behind Google, and that's been like doing 100%, like every few months,
Mhm.
And it's all about learning to sell, and then you buy, and
Right.
But anyway, I just thought I'm wondering to what extent to make a kind of right-on movie or right-on project, in terms of it could be about green vegetables or something, to be stereotypical, or to kind of combine things that are in my life at the moment, you know, in terms of trading, it could, and then kind of create some kind of interesting intersection. Who knows?
Mhm. Sure. I
It
mean,
might be
yeah,
too ambitious. I mean, because
sure. Well, I mean, the nice thing is you can kind of think of whatever you want to do and try it, that can, or try what sort of rough drafts, ideas on film. It doesn't have to be a completed 2 hour film. It's going to be, for most people, it's a 2 minute, 3 minute film is their sort of project of some
yeah.
sort. One person just had storyboards and for an animated film he wants to make, and he works with a film group already. So yeah, you can be as ambitious as you want. And of course, as you start getting into crypto, you start unpacking all the levels of crypto as well, which there's a lot of sort of overlap of integral and crypto in a lot of ways, because crypto is is one of these things that subverts so many different systems of power, decentralization, that whole general idea.
Yeah. I mean, there's some of them which aren't decentralized, like Ripple.
Yeah.
And the banks are trying to get into it all. But
they're not going to give up without a fight. And who knows what's going to happen with it ultimately. I mean, digital currency is here to stay. It's just what form it takes.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah, it's. I mean, a lot of people are saying Bitcoin's going to go up to 100,000, 200,000.
Yeah, they've been saying $1 million Bitcoin by the end of 2020, by the end of 2018.
No, it's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, I think I've seen $1 million one by like the end of the decade. But who knows?
Maybe.
I mean, I think a lot of these regular currencies, there's a good chance they're going to melt down. With this big depression that's on its way.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's an interesting time now. So certainly that. So the other question is let's see, 11 a.m. Pacific time, which would be 7 p.m. I guess for you. Does that time work for you?
It's perfect.
On a Monday. Okay, yeah, because that might be the thing. And then also, I don't know if you saw the suggested donation. Is that something that's comfortable for you?
I didn't see that. Well, was it like 300 or 400 quid or something?
Yeah, I think it's $349.
Okay.
The entire 14-week class, which we brought it down a lot. It was about twice that the last time, so we want it to be more accessible to people.
Yeah. And do you need to pay that up front, or can you pay that over monthly? Or
no, I think you can come up with a payment plan. You would just talk to Anna. Anna is the finance person. That's George's wife, Anna.
Yeah.
And I said one of the nicest things for most people is just the community that you form here, because all the people are interested in learning and upgrading, and you are going to work with a group, so one group of people that'll all work together.
How many?
All work with each other. Typically 3 or 4 in a group. It depends how many people we have in the class and how many groups we have. We could do 4 or 5, but it's tough. If you get too many people, it's hard for everyone to agree when they want to meet, because then you're also going to have meetings at some point where you're going to get together on Zoom and talk about
and
projects.
People obviously in the group, they communicate with each other during the week or whatever.
Right. And then also, I mean, typically people end up communicating with each other a lot during the week and other times, and sometimes even crossing groups, because the whole group is a very tight cohort by the end. Everyone was really supporting everyone, and we had different people at different structures and different levels and different emotional things and things that they were trying to work through. And so
to what extent would you like, say there's spectrum, or maybe they're not it's not mutually exclusive,
right?
But let's say there were you've got a kind of activist aspect, and you've got a therapeutic aspect, and then you've got maybe I don't think this is like an academic course, is it? So it's like to what extent is this about a personal world therapeutic, or about about an activism? Is it kind of holism to it?
That's the whole idea with the integral idea, is that it's sort of holism. You can't really separate therapy, activism, and all these different things are all interrelated, because the reason there's so much depression and anxiety in the world is because the world situation is so dysfunctional and unhealthy. So it's not just about, but there is also an individual interior component. There's an individual exterior component, because if you have trouble with the job, or you don't know where your money's coming from, or, these are all individual. And then there's collective things. There are cultural and social issues, and then there's systemic issues, and all of those are interrelated, and they're all co-evolving as well. So when you work on solving these, you need to look at all of them.
It's funny, because in my life, there's kind of 2 groups where you could, to be very, I'm either like with a group of people who I find intensely irritating often, who do lots of yoga and all sort of personal growth, and they're quite good. They can be quite good at being in connection with their bodies or their feelings or whatever. And then you've got people who are activists, people like Extinction Rebellion, and they're like, to use a cliche, they're just kind of consumed with rage, and they don't really have any real kind of emotional literacy. It seems,
Yeah.
they're kind of like on this kind of, to use a a kind of treadmill of anger
Yeah. In the US, there's that term social justice warriors, SJW,
yeah,
which gets used for people like that who just are on Twitter raging all the time at someone who uses the wrong pronoun or whatever, rather than at a system of injustice that keeps us all. So yeah,
yeah,
that's true. And there's in integral theory, there's a contrast between waking up and growing up, and certainly the yoga type people that you're talking about, the beautiful women in yoga pants who go to Whole Foods and buy organic, granola or whatever. A lot of them are in that waking up. They're like, I'm really woke, I'm waking up, but they're not growing up. So you have to do
yeah,
both
yeah,
of those. And with the Extinction Rebellion, sometimes they're stuck in a sort of anger us versus them, even though they're thinking they're very pluralistic, but they're still stuck in a mythic structure, which is us versus them.
yeah.
There's a lot of us them thinking on the left as well as the right, which is the reason we have so many problems now.
Well,
So,
I mean, all of those problems I can identify as having sometimes. I mean,
sure, we all do.
I'm not like evolved on it. I can get awareness, but I haven't really got very much integral, which is why this course could be very good for me. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So it's really fun. And it's just really a cool journey, I think, for people. So,
yeah.
so if you're interested in going forward, as I say, with it, there's no assigned readings. We're not like you have to read Ken Wilber. He's very hard to read anyway. I mean, we have
Funny
one
enough,
basic.
I bought two of his books. I bought one. Was it the one on psychology and the one on spirituality? It's like really dense stuff.
Yeah, he's tough. I mean, the easiest book of his to read probably is The Brief History of Everything, which is sort of a more introductory
Yeah,
book. But I mean, we're going to send out an article. There's a good article on the Integral Life site, which is sort of an introduction to Integral. That's very clear and straightforward, especially for people who don't have any experience with it, because just the idea that there can be domains of knowledge that can expand outwards and domains of perception and awareness. And essentially, as you move up this ladder, you have a deeper viewpoint and a broader viewpoint, increased depth and span. And
yeah,
a lot of times you try to talk about that, people who are very pluralistic tend to say, oh, that's elitist because you're in
right.
a hierarchy, because the pluralistic responds against dominator hierarchies, which is what the mythic and the rational have. But when you get to the integral, then you can say, no, there are hierarchies of knowledge, hierarchies of experience, and you can just see more and deeper, but that doesn't make you better. It just means that in that domain, you can see more.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You might still be incapable of having a good relationship with your wife, whatever, or your husband, or
Yeah.
it doesn't
I
necessarily make you a better person. It's just there are different domains where you can see more, or where you can perceive more, where you are cognitively have a broader thing. And so the goal is to help expand that out and help you see those different dimensions.
mean, I once had it sounds a bit wacky, but I went to had a healing session with a guy who started like a shiatsu school in Brighton years ago, 30 years ago. He started it. And I'm not joking. I mean, he was so good. Some people, they can like move energy with their presence and he literally was the other side of the room doing things to my body. I mean, that's like a level of awareness that I'm just not plugged into, normally.
Yeah,
But,
that's
there are
interesting.
all these interesting,
Yeah, the truth is stranger than we can think.
yeah. I mean, as you were talking, I was thinking about, because in my life, I've got this split between, there's the part of me that's a trader, I learned about trading,
Hmm.
which is quite future orientated, the idea you make lots of money and then you do this project, But I'd quite like to have an awareness of and a value of trading in the now, in terms of it's like valuable, there's things going on in it. There are patterns, the Fibonacci.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I would like to be able to turn being a successful trader into a therapeutic, which had, it wasn't just, it was serving certain values as well, but I don't know what you think about that.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I don't know what form that takes. For me,
No.
I don't do a lot of day trading anymore. I mean, I have at times looked at it and almost kind of like you know what, I've looked at a lot of Fibonacci's and laid out a lot of moving averages and that kind of stuff. And I was like, I don't think this is all that reliable. It seems to do what it's going to do. You know, you can see micro patterns and long-term patterns.
It is interesting. Yeah, I think it's
kind
about
of more into the hodl now, you know.
Pardon?
I'm more into the hodling than the, you know.
Yeah. It's
Although I have a
interesting.
friend who's a major trader, you know.
Who's?
A friend of mine was a major day trader, and he made a ton of money and then lost. I mean, he had over $1 million. He started with $12,000, and at the end of the year, he had like over $1 million. But that was because he was trading when crypto was doing this, and went up to $20,000. And then I said, you should pull some money out and pay off your apartment and pay off your stuff. And he's like, no, this is going to go to 100 million. I was like,
exactly me. That's my story. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and so then he lost most of his money because crypto, took a dive.
Yeah. Apparently there's a good, there's a chart about, it's kind of euphoria, when crypto's going crazy high, people literally go insane because they think they're infallible, and it's just understood as, I mean, from experience now. Next time it goes crazy, I'll kind of know, hopefully,
right.
But it's a recognized, if you so, because I put like £25,000 in, and I didn't do anything, and then my neighbor told me, and he said, oh, by the way, crypto's gone up, and I said I was over £1 million. It's like, oh, okay, £1 million. Okay, I've got £1 million. Oh, okay. And it's like, I looked at it and you think, well, I'm going to have £10 million,
Right.
And then you think you know what you're doing because you've made all this money. You have no idea what you're doing.
Oh, yeah. That's sort of the story of all the successful traders. They get in at the right time, they make a ton of money, and then they think that they're brilliant,
Yeah.
Unless you know to get out, when it hit 20, I mean, now we all know if it goes to 15, I'm out, 14, 15, I'm bouncing out about Bitcoin probably because I'm happy to double up and wait for it to come back down again. And maybe it'll go to 30 before it comes down again. But you always are wrong if you're a trader. You're never going to get out at the right time. Just hopefully you get out when it's higher than what you paid,
The thing, I did a little course in it, and it's just basically about staying in the game, a lot of it, and banking profits and stop loss, obviously,
Yeah.
Anyway,
so they're fascinating things, but yeah, I think I say a lot of the people who are interested in crypto are also kind of into what's sometimes called integral theory, or game B is another term that's becoming popular. It's the idea that game A is the game we're all in now, and it's not working anymore. We have to create a game B, which is a new kind of society. Metamodernism is another term that's used a lot for that. Spiral dynamics. So, what Mark kind of goes through, we will recommend films sometimes to see, say, hey, you might want to check some of these films out, or this TV show, because it's also integral in the way it's working.
Oh, that would be good. Yeah.
Messiah on Netflix.
Which one?
The show Messiah, which is sort of about what would happen if...
I saw that.
Oh, you saw Messiah?
Yeah, about the guy who you don't know whether he's like an evil guy or Jesus.
Right, this Jesus character, right. And if you watch that show, once you kind of go through the course, you start looking for different structures of consciousness. You realize even from the first episode, you're seeing magic, mythic, rational, pluralistic, and integral, which is really rare. All 5 of the structures are in the first episode in different characters. So a lot of it is about how these different structures are reacting to this figure who's like a mirror,
Oh, I'd like to watch it again with.
So you have these sort of tribal people who think he's magic. They're like very into the magic structure, and he did some kind of miracle, and so they follow him for that. And then you have the mythic structure, which is the Israeli secret agent who's a boxer and he's tough and he uses a lot of violence. Yeah. Very us versus them, but in a modern way. And then the rational is the CIA agent. And she can't, the idea that he could really be any kind of holy man is just alien to her. She's just, as far as she's concerned, he's some kind of threat, and she has to figure out what that is, And then
do you think it leaves it open? Because it feels to me like they're turning him into a terrorist somehow.
Well, sort of, but they also at the end turn him into a Jesus character,
There's a miracle, isn't there?
Yeah, it's very sort of open. I mean, there's nothing he's doing that's actually a terrorist thing. So yeah, it kind of plays the line, and it's hard to know whether they're going to have a second season, and if so, where they go with it. But the first season I thought was pretty amazing. You also have like the mythic character in terms of the evangelical preacher in America, who's a modern magic mythic character, but he's also kind of magic mythic, and so he projects what he wants to onto Jesus. And Jesus, this Jesus character, the Al Masri, and
Yeah.
Al Masri is constantly very integral. He changes his approach depending on who he's talking to, so he's more of an integral character in that way.
Ah.
So it kind of is unpacking each of these different structures and how they react to this Messiah figure, And you have the president, who's a Mormon, which is sort of a mythic religion as well, but a modern figure as well. He's president,
Yeah.
So I think it was deliberately, and in fact, the people who worked on that, a lot of them have worked with the Wachowskis, who are also integral and study integral theory. So,
Oh wow.
like Sense8, the show on Netflix, is another integral show, and that one is very integral because the Wachowskis have studied with Ken Wilber, so
Ah.
they're
Okay.
like hardcore integral filmmakers.
Yeah.
So the whole idea of integral is you're just unpacking different structures and trying to help shed light on all the different dimensions of an issue, even so that different people watching it will see it differently depending on what they're bringing into it, so that, because if you're too advanced or too pluralistic, then mythic people don't have a way in, and then you're more like an art film.
Yeah.
Art films are great for people who are there, but they're not good for people who aren't there. Whereas if you make a popular work, like Black Panther is another example of a very sophisticated work that looks like a Marvel superhero film, but it has all these other layers in it that are there if you see them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we're doing, I say, and so it's not any kind of like heavy academic stuff. Although I say Mark has a pretty sophisticated theory that's the first mature application of integral theory to art, I think. Ken said it's the most important work on film, so it's great.
Oh wow! What's that? Which work?
Well, Ken was saying that about Mark's work. So Ken is a fan of Mark's work as far as a mature application of integral theory to the moving image.
Oh wow!
And I say what was surprising to us after the last course was just how powerful it was on the people in the course to not only study it, but to also try to apply it in a way, go through the process of applying it. Just helps to shift your consciousness and help you see everything. Just look for the dimensions of everything.
Yeah.
So you'll never be able to.
There's some spiral dynamics on the course. Do you hand out stuff? Is there stuff about that in terms of?
Not really, because the approach is more integral. Although there's a lot of overlap between spiral dynamics and integral theory. So
yeah,
very similar. They just have a slightly different approach. But I say our approach also is. I mean, it's based on integral theory, but it's not heavy into the theory. We're not having you read any Ken Wilber. He's just explaining some of the key ideas, like the quadrants, the idea of structures of consciousness, so you can learn to see them, magic, mythic, rational, pluralistic, integral, because it's useful to be able to see them even all around you, see when a situation is coming from a particular structure, or a person, or a politician is at a certain structure, or a social system is at a structure. Then you're like, oh, no wonder it's acting that way. It's rational. We have right now we have 3 pathological structures competing for power in the West. We have mythic, rational, and pluralistic, and all 3 of them have pathologies, which they can't see. And you really can't see the structures until you get to integral. Once you're at integral, then you can see all the lower structures and realize where they are and why each one is pathological. And our technologies are now several stages ahead of that, even. Because the internet is pluralistic, but the smartphone is integral. This is actually an integral technology. It integrates, all other technologies. And now we have technologies coming on board that are transpersonal, that are like integrating biology and technology, and those are already happening, So we have really advanced technologies, but we still have a lot of our center of gravity is mythic, especially in America and other countries. The rise of ethno-nationalism and all these kinds of things, which are so scary.
So this is also obviously about learning to recognize one's own responses to the world.
Sure. It's about recognizing your own responses and being able to see it in others. If you want to communicate to them, it's easier to figure out, how do I communicate to this person? Well, they're in a mythic structure, so if I communicate with something that starts at pluralistic, it's not going to reach them, Like if you're making something about climate change, you can't start with the idea, we have to fix the earth, it's all, because they don't believe in climate change in the mythic structure. You have to either approach with, we have a moral duty, these are mythic ideas, You know, the Bible says that we're the stewards of the earth, you know, so you can come up with a messaging that actually will communicate to that structure. You know, we have to take care of our families, and if we destroy our environment, that's not protecting our families and our future generation. It's not honoring our ancestors. You know, I mean, that's sort of a basic example, you know, but like if you watch the way Messiah works, the first episode, it's not doing anything to trigger people at each of those stages, I don't think, in a way. So it's respecting all the different stages, even though you can take a big picture look and say, oh, that person is thinking this way because she's in this particular mindset.
Yeah.
You can observe it, but it's not condemning any of the different stages. So that's one of the things it's trying to communicate to each of the stages and bring them along in this journey.
So it's a kind of seductive thing, really, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to reach people, you know, with Messiah, I think their goal is to try to have people think about really his message is that we're all God inside of us, you know, and he kind of makes that point in some way or other, that it's not about if I'm Jesus or I'm this Messiah figure, you know, it's about that we all have inside of ourselves this Jesus quality, and we just have to find it, you know. But each person has to come to that starting from where they're at. And if you're starting from a place of like, I'm a servant and you're my master, then he's all right, I'll be your master. If that's what you want, I'll be your master. But if you just want me to be a wise counsel, I'll be that, you know, whatever it is you want, you know. If you need me to shoot the dog, I'll shoot the dog, you know, because the dog is dying. That's it, you know.
It's funny enough. I wrote a guy who's involved in Extinction Rebellion. I sent him a thing about, you know, the need to speak the language of, you just can't assume, you can't talk a language, your own, as if you're talking to preaching the converted, basically. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's a big thing in transformative media, actually. The transformative media space, a lot of the people in it are very pluralistic. They're sort of high pluralistic. So most of what they do is actually preaching the converted. It's speaking to the echo chamber. So if they make a film about how we should free Tibet, they'll show all the Tibetan people, the culture, and all this kind of stuff. And it's all stuff that people who are not naturally inclined to care about Tibet just won't even watch the film or won't reach them. You're not going to cross them. And the problem is we don't need to convince pluralistic people that pollution is bad or that Tibet should be free or all these. We need to convince mythic people of this.
Yeah.
We need to reach the mythic people and point out that how cooperation is better than competition, you know, because there are a lot of ideas that are mythic ideas, like survival of the fittest and only the strong survive, you know, and the ends justify the means. These are all mythic ideas that are very dangerous.
Yeah.
So we need to reach those people. Yeah.
It's good to be like a high-class hooker, you know. You can like get into somebody's head and.
Yeah. Well, ideally, you're like a high-class lover, you know, not a hooker.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think funny enough, I've got a guy who does a lot of work for me. You know, he's like, I'm not interested in putting up shelves or fixing things, you know, manually. It's not my thing. And this guy used to be in a punk band, and he's totally, I mean, conventionally quite wacky. But I like his, you know, I like his eccentricity. But he also happens to be a rabid racist.
Oh, really? And
incredibly, he hates Extinction Rebellion. You know, he goes around defacing Extinction Rebellion posters, right? Mm-hmm. And I go, you know, I've been on an Extinction Rebellion demo, and I kind of think, well, I'll just speak this guy's language. I mean, I'll just tune in with this guy, because if we have a bridge, if we have, you know, a connection, you know, that's what we've got, you know. Mm-hmm. And I've actually certain part, you know, it's opened my mind quite a bit to certain, you know, to the other side, you know, like, for example, trans people, you know, like he gets really enraged because it's like, oh, you know, somebody who's a trans, you know, was previously a guy and then becomes a girl. It freaks him out because he's into girls, and he doesn't want to go with a girl who was previously a guy. And so it really fucks with his head. And before I'd met him, I would have thought, oh my God, he's a terrible person. You don't respect trans people or whatever. But then now I have a kind of understanding of the other side of the argument.
Well, that's
Um,
great.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that is about, that's the other thing we talk about, pathologies and pathological behaviors, because there's a tendency to hate the people who don't think like you do. But when you understand that people are different structures and then where they're coming from, you say, well, that structure has become pathological, then it's easier to kind of communicate with them because, I mean, exactly the idea that you hate or fear people just because you personally don't want to sleep with them is sort of a pathology. But there are pathologies on the other side too, like people who are like, well, everyone who's a male who becomes a female should now be considered an equal woman with a woman, including in things like sports and combat sports.
Well,
And
I
you're like, well,
agree.
wait a minute, that doesn't work. Hang on a minute. But then if you say that, then you get accused of being transphobic because the left has pathology as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm kind of, I don't know what I would call myself, an agnostic. I don't know. I can kind of hold both. See the advantage. I think there should be a third sex, personally.
Well,
I mean,
hopefully, as you come out of this, you'll be able to consider yourself integral, and you'll say, "Well, I'm integral because I see that there are truths on both sides." But that doesn't mean there aren't also higher truths.
Yeah, higher truths. Yeah.
The pluralistic ideal is just that you deconstruct everything. So the pluralism is deconstructing power systems and dominator hierarchies. And so in the pluralistic one, you say, well, everyone is the same and everyone has a truth. And if you're gay or straight or transgender, whatever, it's all the same and everyone's truth is true for them. But the pluralistic structure doesn't put back any kind of center. It doesn't have a reality at the core. Whereas when you get to integral, then you can say there are some truths that are higher from certain perspectival fields. So you can say, yes, it is the case that everyone should be free to do what they want to do and be free to have joy. And it's also the case that transgender male to females aren't identical to women. So it's perfectly appropriate that we might have a separate category for combat sports and basketball and football, or, but that's not saying that we don't love them. It's just, but so you can have these higher truths, but you have to first accept that there are different levels of truth. And a lot of pluralistic people can't get past that one because to them, all truths are relative. So therefore, Al-Qaeda has a truth and, Donald Trump has a truth and everyone's truth is true for them, which is true, but that doesn't get you any closer to actually creating a healthy society,
That's very, I mean, I've been there, and it can very easily flip into nihilism. Mm-hmm. Because if everything is the same, then it's like, well,
Right, and that's the flaw in pluralism. That's why pluralism is just one stage, but you can evolve to the next stage, which is integral.
I used to be like an ironist. I used to have this kind of eyebrow raised all the time at the world. Yep. But it's a bit like you kind of need to get, as you say, you need something meta. You need something.
Yes, that's the meta. Yep, the meta modern is all about that next stage after postmodern. Postmodern is pluralistic, in which you deconstruct everything, but postmodern is still a reaction to modernism, which is the rational structure. The integral structure, which is meta modern, is where you say, look at all of that and say all of these are just useful frames, but there's a higher truth and we can start to put it together again. Right. So the ironic detachment of something like The Simpsons feels a little dated in a way now. Now there's meta modern things which are both extremely irreverent, but also extremely serious and have deep feelings in them and sincerity. So the combination of sarcasm and irony and sincerity is actually a meta-modern in art. That's typically a meta-modern idea.
What's Larry? What about? I don't know him very well, but like Larry David, what's that?
He's, I think, more postmodern because he tends to be. I mean, I haven't really watched a lot of Curb Your Enthusiasm. No. The Simpsons is more postmodern. I think it's kind of deconstructing the whole lifestyle of New York. New York upper middle class.
So what would you say is out there in the media now? So you said Sense8 and Messiah.
Right. So those are integral shows. As far as that meta modern, the show BoJack Horseman. I don't know if you've seen that at all on Netflix. That's an animated show about a washed up Hollywood actor, but he's also a horse. So it's got animals in it. So it's a very funny and hilarious show, but it's also very deeply felt. It's a new genre they're calling a sadcom, rather than a
Oh,
sitcom.
okay.
Rather than a sitcom, they call it a sadcom because there's a sort of core sadness. I mean, he's a dysfunctional guy who's alcoholic and has a lot of problems. But
Oh, wow.
but unlike a postmodern show, it's not just detached and saying, well, that's just the way it is. There's a sense of hope in it. You kind of go through it feeling this guy is starting to unpack what's going on and he's going to maybe be able to help out. But it's also a hilarious and ridiculous show. You know, there's birds and, you know, his agent is a cat and who's his girlfriend and he's a horse. And so he's a horse who's like a human horse. And he was a star of a TV show in the 80s called Horsing Around, where he was a horse who adopted 3 human children.
Funny enough, I saw a photo of masks, you know, coronavirus masks or solutions, and one of them was this guy in a supermarket, and he had the Bojo hat on. You know, that was his
Oh, really?
that was his mask. You know,
funny, yeah.
Anyway,
So
yeah.
there's hope because a lot of media is moving in that direction now. That sort of combination of irreverence and sincerity. That's metamodernism in the art sense, but I say in a more general sense, metamodern, integral. These are all ideas of stepping outside of detached irony, stepping outside of pluralism, stepping outside of the rational, because all of our systems now are rational systems and they're all pathological, our government systems and systems like that.
It's almost like everything is wrong. I mean, you know, to quote Murphy or something.
Mm-hmm.
There are some things that are right, but they tend to be like little projects. But the kind of meta thing, most of them, you know, like the oil industry or the car, you know, transportation.
Right. These are they're all rational systems. And the problem is that the evolutionary arc has sped up dramatically. So that the mythic structure was stable for 1,000 years, you know, and then the rational structure is the Industrial Revolution. That's 200 to 300 years. And then suddenly we're into pluralistic, which is, you know, the information age, and that's only 40 or 50 years. 25, 30 years if you look at the internet, and now we're into the integral stage with smartphones, and so it's accelerating, and that's the problem, is that it's accelerated so fast. I mean, when we went from mythic to rational, you know, the age of the machine, there were a lot of problems just at that time, you know. That shift was quite painful, and a lot of workers got thrown out of work, and there was, you know, the Luddite movement and all this kind of stuff. And that was just one shift from one step to the next, you know. Now we have like 3 stages ahead, and there's still people who are at mythic, and there's still people who are at rational, and there's like hybrids there. And so that's why everything is wrong now, is because things have changed so fast. The systems can't keep up. And systems naturally resist change. They tend to try to dig in their heels when change is coming. That's part of the pathology, is that they don't want to evolve. They're comfortable where they are. So they'll resist it, and they get more and more pathological before they shift to the next stage. And we now have, you know, mythic, rational, and pluralistic are all in this thing where they're all vibrating and getting dysfunctional because they're trying to shift. So if we can make media to help the shift, then we're really helping the world at scale.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think I get the train, you know, from, I live in Brighton on the south coast of England. You get a train up to London sometimes, like an hour. And it's, you know, the train is like industrial evolution, you know, it's a straight line. And you've got all these commuters. Luckily, I don't commute. But you've got all these commuters who are like little sardines on this kind of going backwards and forwards, this very boring linear thing. And then most of them look, and look, some of them on their iPads, but everybody looks emotionally really fucked up, you know. A lot of people do, you know. You've got this amazing technology, but you've got this lifestyle, which is like, you know, and these so you say the values are all over the place, aren't they?
Yeah, I was just in Brighton, actually.
Were you?
Yep, George and Anna live in Brighton, actually. George Poor and Anna.
Yeah, you mentioned that, yeah.
So I just visited them. We had after our class, we had our live session, basically. A bunch of the people from the class got together and stayed in a hostel in Brighton, and it was fun.
Oh, wow.
Nice little town. I didn't have a chance to wander around Brighton very much. And it was just, I was there early March, and it was starting to get heavy. Like restaurants were closing early. We were like, oh, you know, nobody's showing up, you know.
Yeah.
We went to a really good restaurant there. What was it? A Middle Eastern restaurant, I think. It was Turkish.
Okay.
Really good Turkish restaurant.
Do you know what it was called?
I can't remember, but George and Anna probably could remember.
Oh, okay, maybe I'll ask George.
They might remember.
I love Lebanese food, actually.
Yeah. Yep. Anna actually lived in Turkey at one point, so
Oh, wow.
her kids speak Turkish. But anyway, so yeah, I happen to have been in Brighton recently.
Oh,
Anyway,
wow.
did you have any other questions for me about the class or anything else we can answer?
No, it's really, you know, yeah, I'm really, really interested in that. Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
cool.
yeah. When does it start? I mean, in terms of the first.
Technically, the orientation is this Monday, probably
Okay.
at 11 a.m., which would be 7 p.m. your time. Because that's always
So
that thing of
we first get together as a group.
right, and we'll do the orientation, show you about how Moodle works. Moodle is the online site. It's an educational site where a lot of classes are on there. So all the class material will be on Moodle, so you can go on there and download what you need to and whatever.
Okay.
As we do the lectures, the lectures are just Zoom lectures. And they'll also be recorded and uploaded, so you can watch them again afterwards.
Oh, brilliant.
Because sometimes.
So that's and is that like an hour and a half, 2 hours, or an hour?
Hour and a half. I think all the classes are going to be an hour and a half. Yeah, the orientation will be an hour and a half as well. So
Okay.
we'll talk about Moodle. We'll talk about what's going to happen in the class. Mark will give you an introduction.
Okay.
And take questions, and also all introduce ourselves to one another, so that then we don't have to take half our class time during the first class to go through the introductions.
Yeah. When is the first class?
Then it will be the next Monday.
Oh, okay.
So it's just every Monday. It's 14 weeks, including the orientation, the introduction, and then 12 modules, 12 module classes, which are 4 modules of 3 classes each.
Okay.
It would just be that, and then community of practice sessions will probably be on Wednesday evening, same time. But
so Monday and Wednesday. Yeah.
most likely, I mean, we can ask people what days are good for them, though. We're pretty flexible. I mean, our hardest thing is just last time we had people on 4 continents, including someone in Kuala Lumpur. So we were doing it at 11 p.m. California time, which put it early morning UK time, but then it meant that Kuala Lumpur was like 3 in the afternoon in Kuala Lumpur. So because there were 16 hours, I think. So yeah, we'll see where it's located. But yeah, it should be fun. We had a good time last time.
I really look forward to it. I'm looking to have my, not my mind. I mean, it feels like a really holistic process.
Definitely, it is. It's kind of very free, not free form, because Mark does lectures every class or so. He'll do kind of a lecture and introduce a lot of stuff, and then you can all kind of process it together and, and go through it. But yeah, it definitely will shift your consciousness. It's that kind of thing you're talking about, of finding what's that space beyond the black and white, beyond the us versus them. It's useful to be able to step outside of the Extinction Rebellion punk friend dichotomy, and be able to say, there is a higher truth here, and if you can help them both move up that scale, then they can both see that higher truth as well. Because anger, that's a problem with activism. A lot of times you say that anger turns people off. You can't reach people with anger, only with love, and sometimes you have to actually center and be calm in order to reach people. Otherwise, it's great if you just want to meet people and get laid and whatever, and then you're meeting a lot of like-minded people and you have a great time and you feel like you're doing something wonderful, but actually you might only be preaching to the converted, and everybody else is just like, oh, those guys are annoying, they just block the road or whatever.
I never understand why there's quite a lot of money behind Extinction Rebellion.
Yeah, I've heard that actually as well.
Yeah, but I never, there's a lot of slagging off billionaires, and I kind of think, well, why aren't we seducing billionaires? If you want,
right, of course,
dialogues,
of course, and the problem isn't the billionaires; it's the structure that allows people to accumulate that much money. To skim that much off of the entire system. There's something dysfunctional about that, obviously, but. Yeah,
that's another. That's the kind of paradox I need to think about with trading. Because if you can make like $1 million without doing anything, and then apparently there's going to be 100 million people who are going to starve every year because of this virus, according World Health Organization. So it's
Yeah, this whole virus situation is it's very interesting how much it's unpacking different systemic issues, even for people who don't normally think in systemic terms, just the
Yeah.
idea that our essential workers are actually just low paid, exploited workers, really, And people are like, these grocery workers, they're heroes. Well, I think they're not heroes, they're hostages, in my opinion. They're only there because they actually have to be there to make money to eat, And some of them,
yeah.
so really I'd love to see them all leave, and all like wealthy people should take a shift at the grocery store. We should have a system where everybody kind of does this, or where we figure out
that would be a lot fairer, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, this idea that they're heroes, some of them, some of the obviously medical workers are heroes. You don't want to diminish it, but it's also a way to virtue signal to say, oh, these grocery workers are heroes, and to not really look at the systemic issue, which is that they're actually hostages.
I can't be honest. We've got this thing in the UK where we're supposed to clap the workers at 8 o'clock on a Thursday night.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do it. It just makes me feel sick, because people, it's like before this happened, I mean, we voted a government that didn't give a fuck about the NHS.
To kill the NHS, and now suddenly it's like they're our heroes, right?
Yeah. And one reason why so many in the UK, we've got a phenomenal amount of elderly people who are dying in care homes.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got care workers who are going in without protective gear, who are then spreading the stuff all around the homes. So the most vulnerable group in the country, which is the elderly, with pre-existing conditions, they're going down like 9 pins. And what's behind that? It's like, well, it's just business as usual. This government didn't care about didn't care really. They've cut like services to the vulnerable and the elderly by 70% in the last 10 years. So it's like, well, of course old people are dying because they were dying before, and now they're just dying again. It's like there isn't. It's like it's not in the system. It's not systemic to provide, what is necessary in that sector.
Yeah. Well, the system feels like it's been captured by powerful, wealthy elements in a way that really only care about creating more wealth for themselves. That's a pathology of capitalism, in a way that capitalism is designed to maximize profit and efficiency, and not to be robust in case of a pandemic or in case of any kind of black swan event. So people are taking apart all these systems. Anyway, so yeah, it's a very interesting systemic moment. I'm sure we'll be talking about it in the classes a lot as well, obviously, because it's sort of the issue of the moment, or the meta issue of the moment, I would say, because it's a.
How long has this course been running for?
This will be the second run of this particular course.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we've done other trainings. Mark has taught other courses at another place, but this is the first time we've actually done a course where we've had people try to embody it and actually create something. I say it's not really about the end product; it's just about that process, and that process seems to be very powerful. We were quite surprised at how transformative it was for everyone in the class.
It's
the woman who's now the pardon.
It's quite amusing because during our conversation, my office chair collapsed. So
oh, really?
I think that's quite fun. It's quite, and it augurs well, really. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Luckily, I've got another one. So.
Well, that's good. So there you go.
Pieces. What?
Out with the old, in with the new.
Well, whatever. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the woman who's now the dean of students at Campus Co-Evolve was actually a student of ours. She was the chairman of or not the chairman. She was running a film school in Johannesburg, basically. She's retired now, the dean. She was the dean of the film school, and she was retired, and then she took our class, and she was so blown away by how it shifted everything she thought about movies and about herself. She's now the dean of students, Gina.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so she had quite an experience as well. So we're hoping this grows, and, because we want to create 1 million conscious media makers who can start to make media that helps to evolve consciousness. Because that's one of our ways out of this, is to help evolve consciousness at scale for the society.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we could slide into fascism just as easily as we could slide into the next step. We can go backwards or forwards, and it's a very.
Well, I've said that about gay rights. Going backwards. We've got Poland. Got a third of the country is declared a LGBT free zone. at the moment.
Where's this, in Poland?
In Poland, yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah, Russia, a lot of places like that.
Yeah,
This
so
is
it's
even symptomatic.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
this is
And also
symptomatic.
racism.
This general slide back towards ethno-nationalism, authoritarianism, and then always there's racism and anti-Semitism and anti-gay, anti all these different things. So it's a scary
And
time.
also, apparently, there's a hell of a lot of domestic violence going on at the moment as well. I mean, apparently most of it, I think they say 75% is men to women, but 25% is women to men.
Really?
But I wouldn't be surprised if it was half and half and men just aren't reporting it,
Maybe. I'd be surprised if it's half and half, because men generally are stronger than women. So.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
And men tend to be better at physical violence. Women are better at emotional violence, though. So I would guess that there's quite a lot of emotional violence that women are initiating or doing better at, because they're trained more in that kind of communion stuff. So if they want to turn it against you, they can. So, but anyway, so that's another issue that's happening now. There's so many different things that are kind of happening. It's a very pregnant time to do the class. So hopefully we'll see you in the class.
We haven't even touched on the locusts.
Pardon?
We haven't even touched on the locusts.
Yeah, plague of locusts. Are they coming?
No, there is one in Africa at the moment. There's a massive plague of locusts.
Right. Well, those are cyclical, though, so they come through.
Yeah. Well, apparently it's bigger than usual.
Oh, that's possible. With climate change, you're going to see a lot of disruption in these systems, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I lived in Africa. I lived in Nigeria and Gabon as a kid, and we actually had a plague of locusts there once when I was there. It was just crazy.
Really?
My parents had a dinner once, and they had to come out with an umbrella to greet guests because the locusts were so much that they were just like literally using an umbrella to try to get in the door and close the door. It's just like millions and billions of locusts, It was pretty insane.
Okay.
Cool.
Well,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, it was great talking to you.
Great talking to you. Yeah.
I look forward to seeing you in the cohort, and I think you'll have a fun time meeting a lot of other like-minded people.
Yeah. So that'll be Wednesday next week. Yeah. Probably.
Monday.
Oh, Monday for the
The class is going to be Monday. Yeah. So the orientation will be Monday as well.
Oh, okay. So which group are you in? Are you in both, or Mondays and Wednesdays?
Yeah, we're in both. Mark and I will be at both the Monday and the Wednesdays.
Oh, okay.
The Monday is the class, and the Wednesday is a community of practice where people can just show up and talk about their projects or talk about other things that we want to talk about. And so it's kind of a fun get together. But Monday is going to be the class, and we'll probably start on Monday. It depends if we have enough people, or if there's still people coming in. It could get delayed another week, but we're kind of playing it loose.
Okay. I could share, if you want to send me something on Facebook, or I could share it. I'm not with loads of people, but
yeah, let me see here. Yeah, I could do that, or you can. Okay. What's the best way to reach you? Facebook or email, or I have your email, I guess.
My email is.
I have your email already.
Email, yeah. You mean what's my Facebook name or something?
Yeah, I could do the Facebook, share something with you if we find something to.
I think I actually don't know.
Or if you follow the Integral Cinema Project, which is Mark.
Integral Cinema
Project. Yeah, on Facebook.
Okay.
That's our main home, and there's lots of things there you can share if you feel like it. He's talked about the class and that, so.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, well, I'll share that.
All righty. Okay. Sounds good. Well, have a good evening.
Thank you.
And it's very nice meeting you, and hopefully we'll see you next week.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.